You've all wondered this question in your games, Dragon or Herald? And that's because whether you're a jungler with a lead, with a deficit, maybe the game is still in coin flip mode, one of the most frequent questions I get is about making the right move at the end of the early game, and if you do the wrong one, it can lead to confusion, throws, and the occasional bout of depression. In this jungle guide, I'm simply going to share a tip or a rule that will not only solve these issues for you, it will simply allow you to accelerate the game state such that you will never have to worry about late game macro. The mid game macro, yeah, but you will have perpetual control of your own climbing destiny by fisting laners, junglers, and towers. So let's just get this out of the way. The key to your climbing and winning as a jungler is tied to the Herald and not the dragons, especially not the Dragon Soul. I have 3 examples with various stakes, a huge lead, huge deficit, a neutral game. To showcase this crucial tip, we'll run through those and see if they make the right decisions, but let me know in the comments if you're a Dragon lover or Herald enjoy at the start of the video, and let me know if that changes by the end. Let me explain why by giving some context, and I hope you can agree. And the whole concept behind these new ways of making videos is to give you actionable tips. So when you're finished with this video, go ahead and your games focus on pathing such that you can get a Herald and see the impact it can have on your game. Now, long-term viewers know that I'm one of the original voices over this concept of objective ping pong. That's in fact my term for it. And this was really when Riot shifted the jungle spawn timers from 2:30 to 2 minutes. For the junglers who farmed really quickly and had a lot of downtime between those sequences, it was really easy to find room to do the dragon and then the Herald and then the dragon and then the Herald. You really didn't have to fight for time. Nowadays, with the spawn timers being 2:15 and the jungle experience not being what it was, there's more of a decision matrix about whether you should go for Herald or Dragon, specifically in relation to your laners. We all understand the Soul win con, and it's really nice to get an Ocean Soul, but the whole concept there of, bringing forward an Elder Dragon if you're an early game team comp versus a Karthus-based scaling comp, well, that is kind of scary. And you know what? When you have a big lead, if you're a scaling team, you really don't need those dragons because you scale anyway. And if you're an early game team, if you close properly, the dragon again won't be an issue. It's great to secure them, there's no downside to it, but it's really how the game goes forward where it becomes a bit of an issue, and you may compromise the Herald secure for those dragons. So why is the Herald so damn useful? Well, at the end of the day, the whole thing that limits us moving around the map is towers. And the whole point of the game is to take towers such that we can get to the Nexus. I hope you guys can agree on this. And in order to win fights and beat laners and beat junglers, you need gold, and with gold you buy items, and with items you get wins. Obviously, there is such thing as lane priority when it comes to taking dragons and heralds. You can't just do it willy-nilly and expect good things to happen. Sometimes you're in the lead and that void eyeball just looks really sexy, and sometimes you simply want to grill a dragon. But just because you have a lead early doesn't mean you need to take a dragon. You can keep your lead by just farming and making sure the enemy jungler doesn't exist. You are watching on your screen now Canyon on Kha'Zix versus a Master Yi, and you're going to watch him invade, gank, get hugely fed, and he has no concern about the dragon because he can keep farming and doing the same thing over and over again, enhancing his lead, denying the enemy jungler and scaling comp the ability to get any sort of free stats. But then eventually, as those highlights would have been pretty quick, Canyon wants to go ahead and secure that Herald such that he can push the game state forward, elevate it, and close the game out. Unfortunately, due to resources and laner position, the Yi is able to secure it and Kha'Zix Canyon has to give it up. Now, if you're behind in the situation from the Yi's perspective, what you can do here is now elevate the game state supporting a winning lane that you've invested a lot of time into. In this case, it's top lane, in this case, it's yourself. You give yourself all the plates on the top side, you break open the tower, the enemy laner, and you can now push the top side. And from here, the point is to take you and your top lane around the map to make sure we can swap and beat down bottom lane. You can also go ahead and take that mid lane, and now you can control those dragons to try get soul because you do scale and we do want that. And you can see the gold swing is favorable for the Master Yi's team. However, as much as I would like to show you what to do next and why it's so important, it didn't quite happen in this game, so I found another game where there was more of a neutral game state, and I can show you exactly what to do once you've secured that Herald. If you happen to be the Master Yi in that game, or you happen to be the Kayn in this one, you want to pay attention to exactly how this Herald can infuse a gold lead and make it go from a neutral game to a 10k gold lead. How you can go from a deficit to a 5k gold lead, and as such get more items and the ability to close the game up before a macro death pool becomes the issue. As we pick up the action, you'll see highlights of the early game just to see how both junglers are trying to get themselves fed, a few ganks, a few deaths, but the Kayn has put himself in a position by sequencing upside to make sure he can get the gank on the top lane and the mid lane, control that, and then fall back to an 8-minute Herald. Here's where things get a little bit gnarly and a little bit weird, and your jungling intuition needs to come through strong. Because Kayn has positioned himself in a way that he can get the Herald, much like Canyon did, Lee said, you know what, I have to trade something, and that's very important. If you can't take the Herald, it is important that you try get a dragon, you try make plays on the other side of the map, which is what the Lee Sin is going to do. If you give up a dragon or two early, that's absolutely fine. Don't fall into the bait that you need to contest it. I don't want you to contest it. If they do a dragon early, do the Herald, you'll see in the next example. However, if you've decided to do the Herald, you have that prior and the enemy jungler says, well, I can't do nothing, let me take the dragon, get my bot lane ahead and position myself for a second Herald and potentially a soul. How you react as the Kayn is important, and as you would have seen, move on down, instead of taking the Herald, let's go ahead and gank that mid lane. I can see my bot lane now after that kill is about to be dove by the Lee Sin. This is obvious. They're low, he's showing up. Let's use the fact that we have high mobility, and of course Kayn, Hecarim, any jungler can really do this. Let's move on down and cut them off to prevent that particular death. This is fine. It's also important because if you're a Kayn or someone that's about to get a huge item spike, you don't want to force a fight over a neutral objective or so on. And of course, you could potentially lose it if you didn't reset to become your strongest self. In this case, Rusty Boy with a Gore Drinker. In another case, maybe you've completed an Essence Reaver with your Eclipse on Rengar. The point being, and hopefully what you're learning from these quick highlights and these snippets and these understandings, is while you can path for the Herald, understand that some people will contest it and you might have to back off with no lane of priority. That was the first example. In the second one, you might want to do it, but it might be a better decision to protect your laners from the Lee Sin trying to gain control through the dragon play. This is especially huge if you've had a strong early game, and I've made lots of videos about that recently, so you can have a look at those. But now, because the dragon is down, because of the fact that your bot lane would have had to reset, you know the Lee Sin will now focus on the mid lane, the top lane, and the top side to try and secure that Herald. He can still ping pong, dragon, Herald, dragon, Herald. And as we diverted our attention away from taking it, we need to make a play such that this is not a priority issue and we can fall back to it. Firstly, make sure you control one of the lanes. If top lane is gankable, you can red gank top lane. If the enemy top lane is of course a fidget spinner, make sure he's sent back to the toy store, and then you can float on down to impact the mid lane where you see the enemy support is ganking, your support has prior, play around your team. Way too often people tell me, oh, I couldn't take the Herald because I had no prior. Create the prior, make your own luck. My bot lane rotated at the wrong time. Well, could you have rotated to join them and maybe make something happen? Yes, okay, then that's on you. Because we're able to chunk them and do this and push them out, we see the Lee Sin rotate from the top side. We know he's going to fall back into that area. You have the Gragas on the top side, you have the Yasuo, the Nautilus, you have the numbers and the pressure now to take that Herald safely. There is always, however, a downside. The jungler who happens to be losing or feeling a bit of pressure might try and coin flip this. Pay attention to it, hit the eyeball, hit your smite, combo it very nicely. If they overcommit and die, then, you know, that's on them. They could have done something else in the meantime, but we know Lee Sin did dragon sequenced up. He had nothing else to do. He knows his Herald can be used to snowball the game against him. Please note, as Ross does go for this, that the gold lead is pretty much equal. Now, given the game is in the balance and you've just made a good play by the Lee Sin coin flipping, go ahead, gank mid lane, use the Herald, get that down to 3-2 plates, activate it and bust open the map. You don't always want to use it immediately, and we will look at the next example to cover that, but the point is, because the enemy jungler made a mistake and is gray screen and you have the most important objective on the map, we can use that to infuse a huge gold advantage. Kill Syndra, take the towers. If Lee Sin shows up, kill them as well. Obviously, you have to use your mechanics. You have to use your lead accordingly. Don't, overstay, die, and lose the Herald. Make a measured play and understand if you can 2v2 or not. Knowing your champion's limitations here and turning and going back in and out is one of the hallmarks of a skilled jungler. If you just run away here and give it all up, then you're wasting that opportunity as well. And as you see on screen, the Jinx and the Set rotate to try and contain this and get themselves some kills. And yes, Hazaki dies, and yes, Rusty Boy is going to die. And with that shutdown, the gold lead is still now 2k. But what's the benefit of this? They forced a reaction and a rotation on the map to deal with the mid lane focus. Kayn's bottom lane in this particular situation, if no one reacts to it, will be able to get 1, 2, maybe even 3 plates. However, in this case, they react to it, Syndra goes bot lane, they're only able to get 1, but that's a whole wave push they get, that's a whole plate they get, and while it's not huge, the gold lead is now around 2.1k. Now, as we saw in the first example, if you allow me to use an animated map, if you do push the top lane wave, very frequently, if a bottom lane dies, frequently a support or someone, maybe even the ADC as well, will reset to try and deal with that pressure release, and again, your bottom lane gets free real estate on the wave and the towers. Can happen for the mid lane as well. So that pressure redirect happens no matter what lane you use the Herald. The benefit of using it mid lane is you get a kind of weird, sort of inverted fog of war if you look at this diagrammed map. If your mid laner simply goes mid and continues to pressure the enemy mid laner, it's on you to shadow and focus on this understanding. Don't fall back to your junglers just to farm. Use the back timings to take a dragon. Use the back timings and the power you have to move your vision into their jungle. The whole point is to push your line of influence forward such that you can shadow and, take the bottom lane turret as you would have seen. We can reset, we can now move to cut the Lee Sin off the top lane, we can take that turret, and then the vision line will now move forward, and now everything is parallel to the mid lane, and we did so with ease, because when you take the mid lane, it creates a weird darkness for the allied team as you would have seen, and you can move freely within that and take control of the map. If you do get a really good early Herald usage, then you might be able to rotate to all 3 lanes pre-14 to get maximum plates, that's 15, but most of the time, like in this game, not all 3 lanes will be winning, so you won't be able to have that luxury. At the very least, you get 10 from mid and bot, and that's absolutely fine, plus a couple top lane by extension of your ganks and presence. And with that counter gank top lane and those kills, we're now 9-2-2, we're taking all the camps, we're gonna get more kills, and you'll notice that gold lead is ballooned to 6k, all because of the first Herald usage, giving up that first dragon, cutting off the enemy Lee Sin from the dive, using the Herald as a pressure release for the rest of your lanes who might be having a difficult time, and from there you get a dragon and now you can push the map, which means using the enemy jungle as your jungle, and your jungle camps are just basically backup. If you have split pushes, which we all do with Hellbreaker meta, or you simply don't need the whole of your team to join you, they might just get towers by extension. Your pressure and your rotations force them to deal with you, and your team just gets to hit structures the whole game. Just be wary when you do this, just like when I told you, you take the mid lane first, don't fall back to your chems. Make sure you are shadowing the laners who are going to be pushing. Because you're fed, because you're the win condition, you have the ability to win all fights. Don't forget to continually push waves out as well, and then you can always fall back to dragons, but it's not really a win condition at this point, because as you can see, the gold lead is so insurmountable, there's literally no way the enemy team can just run through a whole bunch of vision and their jungle when you're roaming it, take a dragon and fall back unhurt. It's ridiculous. If that happens, you through. So while falling back to a dragon, and securing those stats for the next fight is great, you're not blindly looking for soul on Elder. And now, because of that neutral game escalating to a 10k gold lead, as you would have seen from the rest of that footage, let's jump forth into our final game where instead of being behind, instead of being neutral, we just have a giga turbo huge lead. So how do we use that to simply just annihilate the competition? Firstly, if the enemy jungler makes a mistake tracking-wise, ganking-wise, CS-wise, early game plan, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how you get a lead here, whether it's invading, ganking, fisting them in a 2v2 in the river, you have a lead. In this case, obviously, as you will see, it's the Rengar versus Diana, and you're seeing highlights of how the Rengar gets absolutely juiced. Most importantly here, you're noticing he does not fall back to his blue side jungle. He continuously invades, controls rivers, invades, runs across mid lane, counter ganks, prevents it from farming at all. Instead of lockdown defense, we just call this lockdown jungling. You do not let them control anything, and basically you control at least 3 to 4 quadrants, maybe even the whole map, yes? But that blue side, that's just backup. You really don't care about it. As long as they don't get it, you don't care about it because you already have 2 quadrants to control. You might even have a third. And what you want to do, as you can see, when someone is really far behind here, is sort of give them an olive branch. Say, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and take that dragon? My bot lane's resetting. I'm gonna head to the top side and finally do those blue camps. I know I'm gonna be level 7, you're level 5. You will have the prerogative to get catch-up experience and a dragon to feel good about yourself. And this is the rank 1 Rengar in Korea, so one of the best in the world. You can see how he used his dragon to get this lead. And while he goes for the Herald, look at the gold lead. This is gonna balloon in the next 3 to 4 minutes. This is what you want to do when you have a 4k gold lead at 11 minutes. Do not waste your time doing a dragon if the lanes aren't perfect. Do not waste your time doing a dragon if they get to take Herald. You do not want them to get that Herald. You saw in the Yee's case how it can flip the gold lead. The only thing is, once you've secured it, don't just run mid lane and use it. There's still 5 plates left. You're not going to get maximum value from this. And I really hope you've understood the insinuation I've said the whole video, which is, yeah, this is about the gold lead, but it's not about the gold from the plates. That's relatively minimal. It's absolutely fine and nice to get for sure, but it gives you gold leads and item spikes and map control that you can then use to take other stuff. That's what makes the gold lead go up. It's the accessibility to their side of the map. It's the timing that gives you a full mythic and maybe a second item such that no one can even fight you. And if you're just using it for a few plates and you're not going to bust open the map and you're not going to force pressure, then why did you even take it? That can be a trap too, my friends. If you can take 3-4 camps while they want to waste time doing it, don't go die for it like the Lee Sin did in the second example. But without a doubt, keep control of the map, make sure you have good vision, get your items. Now you can push the mid lane. If you see an opportunity to get a kill, to get a pick, and to dive mid lane, now we can do it. Get the plates down to 3, start hitting it, activate your Herald, blow it open, and now you can venture into the side lanes and you can dive 4v2 bot lane, you can dive 3v1 top lane. Exactly the same accessibility as the second example with Kayn, except the effects of the gold lead are exponential when you already had a lead in the first place. In the case of Rengar here, he didn't waste it and use it just because. He waited until he could bust open a tower to elevate the game state. That's what you want to do here. It's for gold, it's to elevate the game state, it's to start moving your leading and winning pieces around the map so that they can extend their lead and by extension give a lead to the rest of your team. And as you can see, the dragons don't really factor in. Yes, they give you valuable stats for soul points, but a well-executed Herald in any game state will allow you to take all the dragons you want purely because of the lead you can accrue. Blindly going for early soul point when you don't really need it to win is what opens up the possibility of throwing. If you're an early game comp and you're simply stomping on a scaling comp, why would you give the threat of an Elder? And if you're a scaling comp and you just have a huge lead, you really don't need the soul point or the Elder Dragon because you're just gonna win anyway. So if you want to understand what I'm saying in this point, click the box on the top right and that will, give you a full rundown about those dragons and why you don't necessarily need them. And if you want to understand how to close games out with all the dragons, all the heralds, all the barons, and all the smart macro, click the box on the bottom right.